Once the two pulled away, she was against the wall of her lounge, which she had no idea how they ended up here, and he was so close, too close to her that the air wouldn't pass through them. He stepped away, a smirk on his lips and lust in his eyes. He was a man with heavenly features, enough to bring anyone to their knees. A scar on his cheek added perfection to his beauty. Jungkook, you can call me that. Such an ethereal name for a man like him. She thought, you wanted to watch some movies. As he turned to walk back to the door to bring the abandoned laptop, she held his arm. Ryan, a name is not enough. I need to know you more. You will, with time. After a few minutes of setting up a movie, he had her in his lap, hands on her waist and legs, while all the attention on screen. She had snacks in her lap, holding them tightly. How did she end up in such state? It was him, his words, his touch, his commands, that had her weak. Why couldn't she simply reject him? Maybe because she simply didn't want to, even though she knew he was a walking red sign. Ryan, how did you find me? You're curious about a lot of things, sweet cheeks. His hands burnt against her skin with desires as they grazed against her bare thighs, since she was wearing shorts. Jungkook, I found you through books. Ryan, you can't. I never mentioned my name. Always uploaded my books with a different IP address. Jungkook, you see, sweet cheeks, changing an IP address doesn't hide you from the world. The truth was, Jungkook saw her once. On a stormy, rainy night, she was in a cafe when his eyes fell on her. She kept waiting for the rain to stop anxiously while she typed on the laptop placed in front of her. He was obsessed since the first time his eyes fell on her. Curiosity took over him, and with complete ease, he was able to hack into every device present in that particular cafe and found out she was publishing a book. She sighed. He was not really going to speak. Her insides were a mess, fighting between holding him and pushing him away, wanting him and knowing he was a dangerous man to be around. Jungkook, you want the communication, but I must warn you, you won't be able to step out of it. Wine, what is the difference? It's better to know what I'm getting myself into. Jungkook stared in her eyes, his knuckles grazing against her waist under her shirt. Oh, how badly he wanted her against him. Falling in love was never in his to do list, but now that it was done, he had no plans of stepping out of it. It took him 2 months of trying his best to keep himself away from her. When he gave up, a month he spent watching her from afar, and then he decided to send her gifts every night. Jungkook, you have never seen the CEO of your company, have you? She shook her head, eyes filling up with hope now that he finally started the conversation. Jungkook swore that innocent, curious look in her eyes had him weak to his knees. Jungkook, that's me, sweet cheeks. Her eyes widened up, but before another moment of reaction, she maintained her expressions. Wine, that's not true, right? That's surprising. The name doesn't ring something. It did. She knew it well. She didn't know how to react. Was it alright dating your boss? Wouldn't it become a reason of gossip in the company or getting unfair favors from the boss? Wine, that's complicated. Jungkook, my headache to handle. Sweet cheeks, clear your mind. It should be only me in there. Possessive enough, she scoffed. For the night, the two enjoyed the movie with snacks. She was somehow comfortable now that the conversation had started already. The two ended up in a heated session in kitchen while she was preparing them a dinner. Jungkook was surprisingly gentle when he wanted to, and rough when they were out of their minds. He very well knew how to control his movements. Even after that night, the gifts continued to appear by her front door. The difference was she accepted them without a guilt this time. She had placed her conditions, and Jungkook had accepted them with a very well, if that's what makes me have you answer. Conditions like take me to dates, spend time with me, tell me about yourself, make me fall in love with you. Pretty easy. He was planning to do so nevertheless. It could be counted as a blind date. Wine went to work like usual, there was no change, except for the occasional sudden calls from the boss to her office. Her colleagues were going to suspect. She knew this man was going to be the death of her the first time she received the parcel by her front door. Now, she was sitting across him on a dinner date. Jungkook didn't admire public gatherings. The previous dates were either in his penthouse, the beach at night, the edge of cliffs, or the top of skyscrapers. She had to convince him on a normal date. He admired the dark, all these lights becoming another reason for his disapproval. It was adorable, and the moment she thought that was the time she had to hit her head against the wall because the man was everything but adorable. Stop making that face. She pointed her fork at him. What face? He asked. The man literally sat there, devoid of expressions. This face, exactly this. Jungkook took a look around the restaurant, then back towards her. She was done eating, so he was. He stood up, leaving the cash on the table, and picked her up. Her white panicked eyes took a look of her surrounding, then at him, whisper yelling to put her down. Jungkook, oh, guess what? No. Taking her out of the restaurant, he walked towards the parking and placed her on the bonnet of his car. Wine, but I want to stay inside. He placed his hands on either side of her, closing the distance as he stepped in between her legs. Kissing her lips, he stared down her eyes. Jungkook, or we could switch roles, and I would be the one to stay inside, he whispered. Low and deep, she knew what he meant. As much as he raised her desires, she put her hands on his chest. Wine, Phil tries, won't work. Jungkook, I take challenges very seriously, sweet cheeks. That name. Every time he called her with that had her insides twisting. His kisses went down her cheek and jaw till she had to give in. He had that effect on her, and he took a wrong advantage every time. She wrapped her legs around his torso and with a victorious smirk, he took her to his car. Jungkook had a very dark personality, but sometimes, for the sake of her, he would do things for her wishes, things he had never once admired to even think about, and that was enough for her to accept him every time.